guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name's Ariella and I make videos about med school and my journey to med school. So it's been a week since I hit 500 subscribers and I already almost have 600, which is insane. You guys are so cool and you're so amazing and everyone's so incredibly kind in the comments, and so I'm just really excited that we have a sort of community here where everybody can come and just be positive and learn about what it's like to be a med student or student, get some motivation and just have a good time in between, a extremely rigorous academic schedule. So I thought today would be a really good day to do a Q&A / frequently asked questions of sorts, because I get a lot of similar comments on my YouTube videos asking about my journey to med school and different things that I use for med school, and so I thought that it would be a good idea to answer any questions that you have here and post it as a Q&A. So that's what we're doing today. Okay, so we're gonna jump right into the questions, and the first question that I have is, will taking anatomy and physiology in undergrad help me with med school? So I definitely think that if you take a true dedicated anatomy course in undergrad, especially towards your later years, you will absolutely have an advantage for that specific course when you go to med school. One of my lab partners is actually really great at anatomy, and you could tell like that semester was relatively easy for that person because they were so good at anatomy. And I think if you're in the type of med school where you take anatomy first semester, not necessarily throughout the entire year, that can also be a huge advantage because you can focus less on learning new complicated material and more on perfecting how you study in med school, because that's a hurdle that a lot of us have to jump over right when we get started. And anatomy is a pretty tough thing to do. That being said, you absolutely do not have to take anatomy and physiology before you go to med school. I know plenty of people who were like English majors in undergrad. There are tons of people who are equally as successful. Having that background might be a benefit, but it's definitely not a necessity. The second question that I get pretty often is, what medical school do I go to? And so I haven't really addressed this at all on my YouTube channel just because I want to keep my privacy. You guys know that I go to med school in Philadelphia, even though we're not physically in Philly right now. There's only a few med schools in Philly. So if you're really interested, it is on my other social medias. But another reason that I don't want to say outright what medical school I go to is because I don't want to get in trouble with the administration. I don't want you guys to ever think that my opinion on medical school and just the medical education in general reflects that of the university that I go to. If I give someone advice on, like, say, a medical school application, I don't want anybody to take that as, okay, if I do this thing and I apply to the same school, I will definitely get in. Because in general, the application process is so subjective. It can definitely change person to person, so I don't want to mislead anyone into thinking that my university takes this and doesn't take that, or believes this and doesn't believe that. So I just prefer not to say it on the internet. So I hope you guys understand that. Okay, next is, do I watch my school lectures or do I watch YouTube videos / Lecturio? So if you've seen my vlogs, you probably have an idea of what I use, but specifically my primary source for all of my questions that I have for my class is the lectures. There's a policy in our school that they cannot ask us a question if the answer to the question is not on a PowerPoint slide somewhere. So it has to be on there somewhere. So that's where I primarily get that information from, but I do also use Boards and Beyond videos, and then I will use YouTube videos for specific topics that I need a little bit extra work in. So the Boards and Beyond videos are obviously to prepare for boards, get an idea of what's high yield for boards, and then the YouTube videos is if I just need like a fun mnemonic or an easy way to remember something. I really like, they changed their channel name, but it's Dirty USMLE. I'll put what it's called now here, but they have like really great videos on the glycogen storage diseases and the lysosomal storage diseases. So those are something that I come back to continuously because I always forget them. It's easy to forget like the specific details from those. So I know when I have an exam coming up that might be cumulative over everything I've learned, I go back to those videos and I watch some of those. So that's how I use YouTube. But other than that, I don't really use anything else. I dabbled with the free trial of Osmosis, but honestly, it wasn't my favorite. I found the animations to be very engaging and really fun and cute, but I'm not sure the way the videos are set up, I just find that I don't have any motivation to watch them. But I know that a lot of people do like Osmosis, so that's another thing that you could try. So this question is, how do you study for how did you study for and take the MCAT while you were still taking classes as an undergraduate, and what time frame do you recommend for preparing and taking it? So I'm going to chat about this in two sections. Section A is going to be what I did, and section B is going to be what I recommend, and those are very different, heads up. So what I did is, I messed up when I originally filmed this. So what I meant to say was I first took the MCAT the summer before my senior year, but I took it extremely late, in August of my senior year. That's already a mistake, because by the time your application gets submitted to the medical schools that you're trying to apply to, if you're applying during that fall of your senior year, you're already going to be behind the first wave of applications. And then if you take the MCAT at, let's say, August 1st, your score is likely not going to come out until at least a month later on September 1st. Your chances of getting into medical school diminish significantly based on how much time it actually takes you to submit your application. So if you can get your application out the first day that you can possibly submit it, you will have the best opportunity at getting into med school. That's because admissions are rolling, so as they fill spots, it gets more and more competitive. So because of that, I didn't get into medical school my senior year of college, so I ended up taking the MCAT again in May and then one more time in August. I had a better score in May, but I thought that I could do even more, so I took it again in August, thinking that when I submit my application, I will at least have this improved score from May. But if they consider my application later, then that new MCAT score will get sent to them, and that will hopefully be the highest MCAT score that I've gotten so far, which it was. Okay, let's move on to what I recommend doing. Generally, the timeline is people usually take the MCAT the spring of their junior year while they're in school. That can be really difficult, and I think this is something that the AAMC and pre-med committees and things need to address, because the problem is, ideally, it would be wonderful if you could take the MCAT at the end of summer before your junior year. However, a lot of students don't have the necessary coursework by that point. Particularly, I've noticed biochemistry is a big one that people don't always have, and that's a huge part of the MCAT. It is a very difficult class, and the MCAT questions on biochemistry are really hard. So if you feel confident that you can take biochem the first half of the summer before your junior year, and then maybe take the MCAT right before you start junior year, that could potentially be an option, but I would warn you that you might feel very burnt out by the end of the summer going into a new semester and a new year. I don't know if that timeline lines up well enough for you to be able to study enough. What I generally recommend to people is I recommend you start studying for the MCAT the summer before your junior year. Study all the topics that you have already learned, things like organic chemistry, physics if you've had physics by then, definitely biology because biology is a very dense subject. Try and touch on the subjects that you've already learned and maybe dabble in some of the physiology questions. Psych-Soc, if you haven't had any of that by then, I would recommend learning that from the MCAT materials as well. In general, sociology can be a very good way to improve your MCAT score without having to learn a ton of new information, because it's a very small amount of knowledge for the percentage of your MCAT score that it increases, if that makes sense. Then I also recommend that if you can stack your semesters early to have more classes, like maybe take an extra 2 or 3 credits, depending on how your credit system works, in the first 4 semesters of your undergrad year, so that's the first 2 years, freshman, sophomore year, so that you can have a lighter semester either fall of your junior year or especially spring of your junior year, because then you can take what would have been a 4-credit class space, go down to 12 credits if your university works like mine. A full-time student is 12 credits or more, but a normal student would take 16. So I would try and stack your schedule so that you have those 4 credits open and you can treat that as an MCAT studying course time. That way you're not completely overloaded by your undergraduate course load. You can put a lot of extra time into doing that MCAT work. Then take the MCAT at the end of your spring semester or right in the beginning of the summer after your junior year. That's obviously the ideal situation. Not everyone has the ability to stack their schedule like that. Not everyone can take the MCAT that early if their coursework doesn't work out. In that case, I would generally consider taking a gap year after your senior year in college, just so that you have time to study for the MCAT. But I think another important thing to remember is an MCAT is not your entire application. It's definitely an important part of your application, but all medical schools will consider you as an entire student, not just X MCAT score. So that's generally what I would recommend for the MCAT. Don't do what I did. Learn from my mistakes. So the next one says, please make a video on feelings you faced as a pre-med. I feel like this journey can be really isolating and difficult, especially dealing with feelings of inadequacy and stress during MCAT studying and how you coped with it. Yeah, so I talked about the MCAT studying already, but I have an entire video on my pre-med journey that I will link here. It was definitely a little bit of a dark time for me because I wasn't as successful as I was used to being in high school. I was pretty high achieving in high school, which actually goes into this next question, which is asking, can I talk about my high school and college experiences, what classes I took, grades, GPA, etc. So let's just combine this into one big question. So in high school, I was pretty high achieving. I had a really great support system, and my parents always stressed the importance of my education, and so I didn't really have to try that hard in high school. I had a 4.0 GPA, or I think even higher than a 4.0 GPA because I took a lot of AP classes. I was in the top 10% of my class. We had a smaller class, so that's something to keep in mind. The top 10% is a larger fraction of the class than it would be in like a class of 400 students. But I mean, I was up there. I held myself to a very high academic standard, and so I was a pretty good student in high school. And then so when I got to college, it was a very large adjustment for me. It took me the first 2 years of my education to figure out a workload that worked for me. I struggled a lot with productivity and time management and things like that. And I think I attribute my success in med school in terms of my productivity and my time management and my ability to be able to absorb all this information to the fact that I failed a lot in college. Not necessarily failed in terms of my grades, but just failure in the sense of like stumbling and getting back up and trying again and then falling again. And you know, my academic journey in college was honestly a little rough until junior year when I really hit my stride, and then I did really well from then on. Oh, Lizard! Hi! I think I finished college with a 3.53 GPA, which isn't amazing. It's cum laude, but as you guys know, if you are applying to med school, it's definitely not the highest GPA in the world. And if you watch my MCAT video, I didn't have like a crazy high 100th percentile MCAT score by any means. In terms of what classes I took in college, I was a biology major. Biology had the pre-med stuff built in, so you know, I took normal like 2 semesters of bio with lab, 2 semesters of chem with lab, 2 semesters of organic with lab, physics with lab, labs. I took the recommended anatomy/physiology course. It wasn't a lab anatomy, it was just kind of like one of those online simulated anatomy courses, which was a little bit helpful, but definitely not as helpful as like an actual dissection lab would have been, even if it was animal dissections rather than like donor dissections. I had AP writing credits, so I didn't take any writing courses in college, which wasn't a huge issue for me because in general, English and literature comes very naturally to me. And so something to keep in mind if you are applying for med schools is some med schools do not like to accept AP credit, especially for those core science courses. Keep that in mind when you are deciding whether or not you want to skip like physics 1, for example. Other notable classes that I took in undergrad, I took a lot of psych courses because I really liked this one psych professor. So I ended up getting a psychology minor just based on the fact that I had already completed the requirements for it. So that was kind of like an accidental thing, but it was something that I enjoyed. I took sociology in order to help prepare for the MCAT. I took a lot of upper level biology courses. Some of those were communications intensive, meaning I had to write a lot in them, as well as upper level biology labs. I took microbiome lab. I also took computer science for fun. I was not very good at it, but it was still pretty enjoyable. And yeah, that's like generally what my undergrad coursework looked like. It's pretty typical of a pre-med student at this point, I think. I know I say a lot that you can be whatever major you want to be and go to med school, and that's absolutely true, you can. But for me, being a biology major was what I enjoyed and what I really loved to learn, so I ended up rolling with that, and it worked out. In terms of like the feelings that I felt during undergrad and the feelings of inadequacy when studying for the MCAT, I absolutely felt really horrible when I came out of that first MCAT because I already knew that I was late and I knew that I probably didn't get as good a grade as I wanted. In general, I was very stressed my first few pre-med years just because I hadn't figured out how to really stay on top of my coursework. And as a person who was very high achieving in high school, I fell into the trap of equating my personal self-worth with the grades that I got. I think that's a problem that a lot of students have, and a lot of pre-med students especially, because it's drilled into your head that you have to be a perfect student, you have to do tons of research and volunteering and clinical experience and extracurriculars, and it gets incredibly overwhelming. Don't fall into that trap. Your self-worth is not determined by your academic success or your research success or any of that. Everybody has worth no matter what their journey looks like. And so that was something that I had to kind of learn during my gap year. I was definitely stressed each time studying for the MCAT, but I think I had a little bit farther removed stress because I wasn't ever studying for it at the same time as my schoolwork. I was only a part-time student the spring of my senior year when I took the MCAT for the second time, so I did not have a ton of other things to do. Unfortunately, that's just kind of how my experience ended up because I made that mistake junior year of not taking it in time. I will say though that something that really helped me when I was studying for the MCAT in general was having like a dedicated schedule, similar to the way that you deal with stress when you're studying for a dedicated boards time. So I never gave up my exercise. I was always in the gym burning off steam so that I could feel refreshed and ready to go for the day. I cooked all the time. I made meals that I love and that I enjoy. I really like cooking, so it's kind of like another form of escape for me. I'm fairly artistic. I was in an a cappella group, so I didn't stop doing that while I was studying, and that was another stress reliever. So I think just maintaining the things that you enjoy doing as best as possible. Obviously, if you have a full course load your spring semester and you're studying for the MCAT, that might look a little bit different for you, but try and keep at least one of the things that you enjoy doing every day. I hope that gave you kind of an overview of what my high school and undergraduate life was like. If you want to know more about that, I will link my videos on my pre-med experience and my experience taking the MCAT 3 times. I will add those to the description of this video and to the little I thing up here somewhere, so you can get a lot more information from those videos. The next couple questions are on my tech and stuff that I use. So people ask a lot about what size iPad I use, what kind iPad I use, and if the size that I have is good or if the other size is going to be good. So this bad boy is the 12.9-inch second generation iPad Pro. I don't know if it's actually second or third generation. It's not the one that just came out. It came out a couple years ago, but it has it has a bezel, but it doesn't have the button like the old one did. This is the 12.9-inch because I like to take handwritten notes, but I have seen plenty of people use the smaller, I think it's 10-inch, 10.9-inch, I'm not sure. I have seen a ton of people in med school use those and they like them just fine. I think if you're worried about the weight difference is not that significant. They're both very low profile, easily portable, manageable devices. So I absolutely prefer the larger screen, and I think if you like to do handwritten notes, I would say go for the larger screen, but if that's not really a big issue for you, then go for the smaller one. It's a little bit less expensive. And if you're ever looking to buy very expensive Apple products for your school, look into, there's like an Apple Trade Reddit forum that a lot of Apple fans will go on and sell their old stuff on. And then also there's the Apple certified refurbished things that you can buy. This is how I got this iPad. It was a certified refurbished model. So that's just like a tip that you can use to save a little bit of money if you are looking into getting Apple products. That being said, the iPad is not necessary in order to be successful in school or in medical school or anything. I just really like it. I like having the compatibility between the iPad and my laptop and my phone. They all work really well together. If you are big into graphic design and things, the iPad is amazing. She's lovely. I use it to make all my thumbnails. It's really fun. And if you take a lot of notes and you want to have all your notes on the cloud rather than in a notebook somewhere, that's another reason to potentially consider the iPad instead of physical notebooks, because you're gonna save all that paper and space.
Okay, another question that I get that I forgot to talk about when I filmed the video is, what is the name of the app that you use for your notes? So currently I'm using Notability to put all of the PowerPoints and the scribe notes from the classes that I'm in, and I'm using GoodNotes to take notes on first aid. I am considering switching over to OneNote because I like the idea of having the PowerPoint slides on one side and handwriting notes on the other side, but I will keep you posted and let you know if I decide to change to that next year maybe, but this is what I use currently.
Another thing that people ask is, on my desk, is that a desktop computer? It is not. It's actually a 25-inch, around there, 27-inch Philips monitor that doesn't have great reviews on Amazon, to be honest. I've had no issues with it, and when I originally bought the monitor, it was available for Amazon Prime, and it was sold by Amazon and had great reviews. But now that I look on the website, it has horrible reviews, and it's only available from third-party sellers, so not sure, but I plug my monitor into my laptop and use my laptop as a second screen when I'm at my desk. So I do not have a desktop computer at home. I only use my laptop. But if you're someone that doesn't really spend a lot of time at the computer, then maybe just a normal laptop is the way to go for you. Most medical schools require that you have at least a laptop. Okay, so last question is about skincare stuff. And again, I want to touch on this because it is Skin Cancer Awareness Month. Someone asked me if a pea-sized amount of SPF is enough. And so when I say a pea-sized amount of SPF, I mean the daily sunscreen that you put on your face every morning before you leave. Something that my dermatologist that I used to work with would say is that you brush your teeth every morning, put the sunscreen next to your toothpaste so that you know to put it on every morning. That's gonna help protect you from just your daily sun intake. So even if you never spend a minute outside, you probably spend time in your car driving to and from work, and you're gonna get some sun there. If you go outside on your lunch break, you might get sun. So in that case, it's good to put a pea-sized amount of SPF all over your face. You don't need to put any more than that because you'll probably be wasting the product. But if you're gonna go outside and be at the beach all day or go hiking or something, I recommend that you use more sunscreen and you reapply multiple times throughout the day just to keep yourself protected. So those are all the questions I got. If you have anything else that you want to know, leave it in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!